Hello viewers, and welcome back to Phil's Garage for episode 10 of this GS1000G rebuild. That's right, I'm back from Canada. Had a great holiday, but it's time to get back onto this little problem child. A bit of a cliffhanger at the end of episode 9. I know you've been worried about it, you've been up all night, sleepless nights, wondering what the problem is with this bike. You've been talking about it with your family around the dinner table, and I know you've missed me as well. But anyway, I'm here to help. And in episode 10, we're going to see if we can figure out what is the problem with this engine, in particular cylinder number 2. So let's see if we can find out what the issue was and fix the problem. So let's get on with it. Okay, so the head is off, and as you can see, that number 2 piston is clean compared to the other 3. So it's obviously not firing anywhere near as much as the other 3. There is no evidence of head gasket leak that I can see. And I've checked the valves on cylinder 2, and they seem to be sealing quite well. So I'm going to probably take those valves out just to double check them, see if there might be, say, a sticky valve or something. Also want to double check the ones in cylinder 3, because the compression on that cylinder is slightly down on the others, but it might be just an age thing. Anyway, we move forward. So, here's another thing that I discovered after I took the carbies off. It would seem that the butterfly number 2 is a lot more closed than the other 3. Now, I've had the carbies completely apart, so that could explain some of that. But also, I don't know, maybe when I did the synchronization with the gauges earlier, maybe that carby wasn't working properly, which is why it was adjusted differently. So that may explain why it was sort of running on 4 cylinders. Like when I pulled the spark plug off number 2, it definitely dropped in rev. So number 2 was running in that last test I did, but not as much as the others. So if that carburetor was adjusted a lot more closed, then that would explain that. So yeah, may have been premature taking the head off. So I might have fixed the carby problem when I pulled them apart, but then I should have done a static synchronization on the bench before I put them back on, and then maybe with the meters afterwards as well. Anyway, we live and we learn. Right, I've inspected and relapped the valves for cylinders 2 and 3. 3 was a little bit low on compression, not a huge problem, but a little bit low. And 2, I just wanted to double check. Everything looked okay, but just relapped a few. And it all seems to be sealed up now. So, as I said, there was no evidence of head gasket blow-by. And I think there was a carburetor sink problem that might have been causing some of the issues I saw. So I do have another head gasket, which is handy, so maybe we'll put this head back on. Right, the head's back on. The cams are in and torqued down. The cam timing has been checked. Exhaust system is back on. The cam chain tensioner is on. So I think tomorrow I might be able to slap it back together and see what results we get.
Much later.
Okay, it's all back together and carbies are on. Seems to be running on all four. What have we got there? 213, 215, 225, 243. So, yes, pretty sure I know what went wrong, and I'll explain that soon. Okay, so the bike is now running on 4 cylinders. So what went wrong? How did we get here? And how did we get ourselves into a bit of a kerfuffle? As I said just a few minutes ago in this video, when I took the carburetors off, I noticed that the butterfly for number 2 was a lot more closed than the rest of them, which was like, that's a bit weird. I thought maybe it was some sort of problem with the carburetor when I was tuning it or whatever. But I'm not sure this happens to you, but it happens to me occasionally if I've got a problem that I'm working on. Even when I'm not thinking about it, it might be the middle of the night or whatever, and all of a sudden my brain will go, hey, I know what the problem is and I know what you did. So, what's the sequence of events? So, originally when I put the carburetors on, I gave them a bench synchronization. Put the carbies on and the bike started and seemed to be running okay, ran on all 4. Took it for a bit of a ride earlier in this video, and it was going okay. You know, not fantastic because it didn't have the airbox on. It was still, there was some smoke coming out of the right-hand exhaust, but it was running okay. So then I brought it all back here and thought, okay, I'll start buttoning things up, put the airbox on, do a bit more tuning, etc. Did the timing, and then I thought, oh well, I will sync the carbies properly, as you saw. So I connected up my gauges, and the carbies were slightly out. I mean, the bench synchronization worked okay. But when I put the gauges on there, they were slightly out. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do them properly and tune them properly. Now, to get to all the screws to adjust the carburetors, you need to take the tank off. So when I did this, I had the tank sitting here on a little trestle table, and I connected up the petrol line to the fuel tap and put it on prime. Now, those of you who have worked on these 4-cylinder Suzukis will know that there's something very special about cylinder number 2 and carburetor number 2. Now, the petcocks on these are vacuum operated, and what happens is there's a tube that runs from carburetor number 2 that runs to the petcock, so that when you're on main or reserve, it will only let fuel through when there's a vacuum applied. Now, the hose for that wasn't long enough when I had the tank sitting here. I connected up the fuel line. What I didn't do is block off the vacuum hose to carburetor number 2. And that's what popped into my head a while ago. So what was happening was I'm trying to tune the carburetors, and while there's air coming in through that hose, which is why the butterfly on number 2 was significantly more closed, because it's trying to compensate for this other air coming in. So that was my mistake. I suddenly realized what went wrong. This was after I took the head off, so I didn't really need to take the head off, but I did a bit more valve lapping, so I guess it wasn't too bad. I'd cleaned the carburetors properly, so that was good. So the result of all of that is that the carburetors are now tuned. Now when I retune them with the gauges after realising this and blocking off the vacuum hose to number 2, the carburetors were very, very close, even from the bench sink. So now they're adjusted. I think there was one that needed a slight adjustment. So that would be the reason why number 2 was not running properly. So I guess it's an easy mistake to make. I made it. But it's all back together now, and all 4 cylinders are running correctly. So that's a good result. Anyway, hopefully this is a lesson for anybody out there. If you're doing that sort of thing, always remember that vacuum hose, if it's not plugged into the petcock, it's letting air in and messing up your tuning. So anyway, I assumed I would figure it out eventually, and I did. So we can now move on to maybe some more tuning and another test ride. Okay, so I haven't been videoing as much as I normally do because I was just really trying to get this bike fixed and concentrate on the problem rather than the video, so I apologise for that. But since putting it back together and getting the carbies sorted, I've taken it for another fairly long ride, about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and certainly running a lot better. Running on all 4, definitely, and checked that with the thermometer when I got back, so it's all running on all 4 and revving out nicely. The only issue is that when I got back, it's when you rev it, it doesn't come back down to idle very quickly. It takes a while, and also when I remove the plugs look like the bike is running hot. So those are both symptoms of the bike running lean. The mixture's running lean. So if you remember, the idle screws, pilot screws on these carburetors were at about just over 1.5 turns out from bottomed out. And the idle circuit obviously affects the mixture at idle, but also, anywhere up to a quarter or a third of the, throttle, you're still getting a fair bit of impact from those idle screws. So what I plan to do is turn those idle screws out to about 2.5 turns out. Then see how that goes, see how it idles, and maybe take it for a ride. I also have a Gunson color tune, which you basically plug in and it replaces the spark plug, and you can see into the chamber when it's running, and you can adjust the idle, the mixture for the right color. But I think a good start will be setting those screws to 2.5 turns out and see what difference that makes. But yeah, we've certainly cured the major problem, so now it's just sort of fine tuning. So yeah, let's get on with that. Okay, so that's now started after adjusting those idle screws, and seems to be idling okay. I mean, it's certainly not up to full temperature, but it's coming back to idle pretty easily. So I guess the next thing to do is maybe take it for a quick ride and then get the Gunson color tune out and fine tune those idle circuits. But that seems to be better than it was, so that's good. Right, so after adjusting those pilot jets, I was thinking I'll go for a ride and then come back and then maybe try the Gunson color tune, which is this thing here. But I've now thought, well, I might as well just do that now and get everything tuned and the mixtures all set before I take it for a ride. So I don't have to just keep pulling the tank on and off. So if you haven't seen one of these, this is the Gunson color tune. So I've used this on other bikes. It seems to work quite well. So what you get is you get this little thing here, which is basically a spark plug, but it has a glass center, so you can actually see into the combustion chamber as things are firing. You get a little just a little spanner for tightening it in. You get this extension if you're working on, I don't know, maybe a car or something where the spark plug hole is down right inside a hole, and you can then sort of look through this mirror, but we don't really need that for the bike. And this is an extension for the spark plug lead, so that goes on the end of that, and then the spark plug lead plugs in here. So yeah, you plug that in, and then with the bike warmed up, start it, and then you can look at the combustion color, and based on that determine whether you're lean or rich or just right. So if it's too lean, it'll be sparking white. If it's too rich, it'll be sparking orange. And if it's adjusted correctly, the flame should be a bright blue. So I think, yeah, well, let's get on with that, and we'll do all 4 cylinders. The advantage in these carburetors is the adjustments are on the top there. I mean, I'll have to take the tank off, but some of the other carburetors I've done, the adjustment is in underneath and really difficult to get to. So this will be a lot easier to adjust those. So let's get on and do that. Right, so as you can see, I've got the tank off so I can get to the pilot screws off to one side. The fuel hose is on. I have remembered to block off the vacuum hose. Lesson learned there. And yeah, we'll put the Gunson colour tune into the each of the 4 spark plug holes. And then, as I say, these pilot screws on these carbies are on the top here, so really easy to get to and adjust, whereas some of the others I've done, they're sort of right underneath, so even just trying to get a screwdriver or something in there is really difficult, especially when the engine's running. So this should be a lot easier. So yeah, we'll get the bike up to temperature and then give it a whirl. Okay, so I'm not sure whether you can see that, but that's cylinder number 4, and that seems to be a nice bright blue spark there, so that's probably a good start. So I'll check the others, and then we'll go for a ride. Alright, so I've checked all 4, and they're all sort of flashing a nice blue. I think I'm just going to richen them up a little bit, just another half a turn out, just to be on the safe side. And then I'll double check the plugs. I think number 2 was already showing it was on the verge of being a little bit rich, so I'll back that off a little bit. So I think I'll take it for another ride, see how it goes, and then check the plugs when we get back.
A few minutes later.
Okay, so here we go on test ride number 3, basically. After tuning the carbies, sorting out the carburetor problems. I will check the spark plugs when I get back and see how they look as far as the mixture is concerned. We'll just go for a quick, just a 5-minute ride, just to see if things seem to be going okay. Certainly revs out okay. Gets up to 80 k's easily. Sitting in 4th, 5th gear. It's probably not completely up to temperature yet, so I'm not sure whether the idle is set correctly. But as I say, we'll just do a
a 5-minute ride and see how it goes. I think the idle is still a little bit high, but we can fix that when we stop. Seems to rev out quite nicely, actually. Seem to overtake that truck quite easily. That's good. Okay, getting up to the T intersection, chuck a right, go back through town and then back home.
Right, so that test ride went well. Bike performed nicely. It's certainly not perfect. It's still not idling perfectly. I had to stop and adjust it a few times, but I think that it really needs a good long run. But it's certainly much better than it was. All the temperatures look good. When I got back, I checked the plugs. 1 and 4 look quite nice. Nice colour in them. Number 3 looked a little bit rich, so I backed that off a little bit. And number 2 looked a little bit lean, so I richened that up a little bit. So it's certainly getting to the point where we're just really doing just fine-tuning stuff. So yeah, the motor, I reckon, is pretty much done. So we can move on to smaller jobs. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to see if I can go and get it registered. So come and get the Club Rego check done and get an actual proper plate on this bike, so we can ride it legally. But yeah, there's a few other bits and pieces that I want to finish off. So let's get on with a few of those. Okay, so I'm going to go and see if I can get this thing registered. So wish me luck.
One hour later.
Right, well, unfortunately that's a fail. The problem is the fork seals. The fork seals are leaking, and they've also contaminated the front brake pads and discs. So, I mean, the brakes were never that good, so that probably explains a bit. So not a huge problem, but we need to change the fork seals and put new pads through the front brakes. So back to the workshop. Okay viewers, well, it's probably a good time to finish this video. We made some really good progress on the bike in this episode. Got it running, worked out what the problem was, which was my fault, I admit that. So the bike is definitely fixed and not faulty. So there's probably one more episode out of this project. There's we've got to do the fork seals and new brake pads to get it past registration. There's a few other little things that I want to fix up. Plus give it a good clean and you know, make it look as nice as possible. So yeah, if you like this sort of thing, then thanks for watching and give us a thumbs up. If you like these old Suzukis, then subscribe to the channel. You know, spread the word if there's other people who are into these old Suzukis. I really love working on these old Suzukis, obviously. I've now got 4. So yeah, once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the last episode, which I'll start recording in the next few days. So we'll see you then. Thanks again.